Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rubber Duck Recruiter. This video is made for technical recruiters, specifically that recruit for the SDLC, and also any kind of software engineers out there that want to know how to think about a technical screen. So I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of technical screens and seen the feedback and seen what has high confidence on sites, what leads to average or low confidence on sites, and what ultimately will lead to a reject. So there's a really good structure to have in your mind when you're going to go into your technical screen. And the structure is, pardon me, I just had some eggs and I'm feeling a little sick. The structure first is the first thing that you want to think about is, say they're asking you to find 2 nodes of a tree or something like that, whatever the technical question is. And the first thing that you want to do is you want to think about these 4 pillars of answering any technical screens. The first pillar is communication. The second pillar is problem solving. The third pillar is going to be coding. And the fourth pillar is going to be verification. So the first pillar is you are you're clarifying the question. You're making sure that you absolutely understand the problem. You're making sure that you are talking through what the problem is trying to accomplish. I'm looking at notes to my left here, by the way. So the idea is that they're looking for a signal that you can understand the problem relatively quickly, that you can identify what is being asked, and that you can identify a solution relatively quickly. But you need to be able to speak through all these things. A good metaphor will be like if you're watching a football game and the announcer there's no announcer, it's just football happening. It's hard to understand the context for most people. So that's kind of what's happening with you on a technical screen. They need to know how you're thinking about things. So the first thing is you communicate about the problem. This is high abstraction. You can also divide it this way. It's the first half of the interview is high abstraction. The last half of the interview is actually like doing behaviors like coding and verifying. So once we've communicated that we understand the problem, asked any clarifications we need, talked about maybe the problem that we're going to implement, then we move to the second pillar, which is problem solving. And problem solving it has a lot to do with space and time complexity, but you're just trying to identify and communicate. And again, we're not coding yet. This is still the first half, which is high abstraction. So you're abstractly telling them why you would choose to solve the problem in this specific way. And you're commenting on efficiency. You're commenting on suboptimal versus optimal solutions. And you're just letting them into your brain about how you're thinking about of the problem solving part of the screen. And here's the thing. At this point, the interviewer might give you a hint that you're off a little bit. And there's 2 ways you can go about this. They might mention something and you're like, the worst thing you can possibly be doing and disregard their hint, which is like maybe you just continue on with your brute force solution because you think that that's what needs to happen. And your brain is kind of in fight or flight mode, so it's not as flexible or malleable. So this is what you do. When the interviewer gives you a hint, you either take the hint and run with it, or you say something like, listen, I understand that you're giving me a hint. I'm not really sure where to take this hint. Just maybe because I'm nervous, but I'm going to go. So, or you try to utilize the hint and you communicate something like, I'm going to try this because I know you're giving me a hint. I'm going to take 30 seconds, but if I can't figure it out, I'm going to go back to my solution because that's the thing that I at least know how to do at a relative level of excellence. So that's the problem solving portion. You're explaining to them how you're going to solve the problem. And you're watching out for hints that you might be on the wrong track. Once you've committed, you've committed. So be decisive. If you've decided to do something that is suboptimal, or maybe you think is suboptimal, that's okay. Those pass screens sometimes, even at big companies like the one that I work at. But the bottom line is that you need to communicate, you need to commit to something and move forward. The next thing is going to be coding. And what they want to see with your coding is they want it to be relatively quick. People get docked for slow coding. So you want to try and keep your coding relatively immediate. That's the vibe. It's not like blazing through it, but it's got to be relatively quick. You want it to be clean. You want it to be non-buggy. And you want it to be, and well organized. So that's the other thing. So as you're coding, keep in mind that sometimes, depending on the company, the interviewer might not know the language that you're coding in. So it's important while you're coding to talk through like, oh, well, I'm coding in Java or I'm coding in C++. And if the interviewer doesn't know what C++ is like, then it's your job to kind of walk them through like, oh, well, we use these values in operators, or just be empathetic, because especially later on in on-site interviews, when you're doing, culture fit or whatever, it's just like, does this person have empathy? Does this person have the ability to step into a colleague's shoes, or step into the customer shoes, or specifically in this setting, step into the interviewer shoes? So as you're coding, make it clean, make it well organized, make it non-buggy, and do it relatively quickly. Now, the final pillar of any tech screen is verification. So anytime somebody answers a problem or has gotten to a conclusion, and the output is what was expected, there's going to be edge cases, like what happens if you put a null value in, or something like that. I'm not a coder, so I don't really know how to speak about it very sophisticatedly, but the bottom line is that there's going to be cases where your code could break, or outlying cases where a user does this weird thing. How do you plan for that? So if your code is really simple and really non-buggy, it can sometimes be a challenge to think of these. But basically, you want to make sure that you, in some way, shape, or form, verify that your code works, verify that it's getting the output you want, and at least speak to what would happen if somebody put this value in, and how your code would handle that use case, that test case. So at the end of the day, that's a really good structure to think about your technical interviews. It's communication first. Make sure I clarify, understand, and communicate how I'm going to move forward with the problem. Second is problem solving. So space-time complexity. How am I going to do this? Come up with the most optimal solution. Give you a window into my brain. Third one, coding. Make sure it's clean, fast, well-structured, non-buggy. And fourth is verification. Right? Communication, problem solving, coding, verification. That's how you should structure all of your answers in a technical screen. I'll follow this video up at some point with an on-site. It's way more in depth. There's a lot more things to consider. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good outline to prepare you to at least coach somebody on a technical screen and prepare yourself for a technical screen. And obviously you can go to HackerRank or LeetCode and set it on a medium level problem, or set it on something, and imagine that there's an interviewer in front of you, and say, okay, well, you want me to do this and this and this, and that'll really make you fluid during the screening process. Cool. Thanks for visiting the Rubber Duck Recruiter, and stay safe out there. Wash your hands, and hopefully this Corona thing can be over in a couple of weeks. Seattle's crazy right now.